Thank you so much. That concludes the section on fiscal policy, and we'll move along to the environment now. Given the opportunities and dangers inherent in natural gas drilling from Marcellus Shale, how will you go about making decisions that will provide maximum protection to the environment and public health while capitalizing on the economic potential of this natural resource? And John, the question goes to you first.
Well, first and foremost, I think that the Commonwealth, the citizens of the Commonwealth, need to have supreme confidence that the Commonwealth is adequately funded to regulate the growth of this industry. The state agency upon which we rely as taxpayers to regulate environmental protection is DEP. DEP has been cut significantly over the years, particularly in the most recent budgets, and I think that the opportunity to tax the industry that they have to regulate in order to provide adequate resources for its regulation makes an awful lot of sense. So I think that's an important consideration to make sure that the citizens of the Commonwealth have supreme confidence in the fact that the Commonwealth is adequately funded to regulate the growth of the industry, and that means having people that are on the taxpayer's dime who are on those drilling operations day in and day out, and not only there while they're doing the drilling operations, but also in the wake of those activities. Another issue for me has to do with bonding and regulating the conduct of these industries to guarantee that if they do inflict some damage that is a threat to public safety or that actually compromises public safety in some way, they have to be held accountable. And we need to create some legislative relief, if you will, to require them to be accountable and to pay their obligation to meet any corrective or reclamation efforts that are a result of their conduct. I think the other thing about the balance that you mentioned about the economic development side of the industry has to do with sourcing labor locally and sourcing materials locally. I have come to understand, as a result of what I've read in the Times and what I've seen in some other discourse in the General Assembly's debate about people coming in and being put up in temporary housing from Louisiana and Texas so that they can work in this industry, and they come in and they just work and then they go back home. That's not very favorable to Pennsylvania labor. We have invested millions of dollars in training in this state, millions of dollars. There are people out there right now who can go to work in this industry, and this industry needs to open the door to them. And that's something, as a legislator, I'd want to pursue with vigor.
Frank.
You can only expect what you inspect. It's a quote from Ronald Reagan. We kept a pretty close eye on the Soviet Union during the Cold War. We could certainly keep an eye on fellow Americans that are setting up drill rigs in our backyards. First line of defense, the people. They know if the stream is being polluted. The DEP, second line of defense. We call the DEP. We depend on the DEP. We, especially in Northeast Pennsylvania, because we drove the Industrial Revolution and have the scars to prove it. Coal mining was a boon, but it was mismanaged. And the coal barons took every penny out of those coal mines and left nothing for remediation. Severance tax? Absolutely. And it should go for immediate remediation to any community, to any citizen, to any home that is affected by drilling. So do we have a baseline? Do we test all wells before they start drilling? Seems pretty simple to me. I've been following the issue. And then if that well is indeed polluted, post-drilling, guess what? You have to pay for it. Whether it's running a new water line, like Cabot had to do, that's what needs to happen. It's pretty simple. The onus is on the gas companies to pay up, but the onus is on we the people to make sure that we are inspecting, understand the process, and watch them like hawks, because they'll try to get away. They're only human. They'll try to get away with anything and everything. And that's why I say it's critical for us to be the eyes and ears, because we don't have enough DEP agents to go out and look at every single aspect of the drilling. But we, the people, when we're involved on our property, can definitely sound the alarm, and that will work.
John, anything to add?
No.
Both of you mentioned the Department of Environmental Protection. The question to you, Frank, is the Department of Environmental Protection adequately serving Pennsylvanians? Why or why not? And if not, what would you propose to improve? I think both of you spoke about money. Are there other things besides money?
DEP should be depoliticized, and it comes down to appointments, again, in Harrisburg, who you know, what you're willing to say, what you're willing to do. I mean, you know, government is not easy, especially when you're down there fighting for the people. You know, when I spoke to the Scranton Times, I said, you know, you would certainly sell more peoples if Scavo were to attain that Senate seat, because I'd be fighting everybody on every issue for the people. I'd be saying this is not right. So the DEP, I wasn't totally happy with their performance in the landfill issues in my own backyard. The people in Old Forge that live in Upper Old Forge were affected by the landfill. I'm on Lower Old Forge. I don't see it, smell it, or hear it, but it's a community fight. So from my experiences with the DEP that are recent and personal, I think we need to revamp the DEP for people that have more critical thinking and less political allegiance and alliances. And as far as whistleblowers go, the people in the DEP should be afforded some of the most critical protections, because for them to speak out inside of that bureaucracy, which now exists in Harrisburg, well, they're certainly putting their job on the line. And the jobs, since we have a lack of opportunity in Pennsylvania, the jobs of family members, of kin. So DEP, it needs to be strengthened, but it needs to be more independent in the decisions, and keep in mind not just the cost versus benefits, because that's a dollar versus people issue, but what is Pennsylvania most proud of? And that's our natural resources, and that is the pristine area that we have now, that the coal mines and all those scars have been remediated and healed.
Thank you. John?
Well, I have a long-standing experience working with the Department of Environmental Protection. I had it when I served out of the Northeast Regional Office here in Scranton in the governor's first term, and I also had an opportunity to work very closely with DEP management as the senior-most economic and community development professional in the state. I have come to believe and witness some extraordinary people doing extraordinary work for the Commonwealth. And to Frank's point, there are appointed management in the department, but the reality of it is the people who keep government going and who keep the people who are on the wall for you are the civil servants who get up and go to work every day and have been there for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, and they're extraordinary people. They're extraordinary people doing great work. There are sometimes great people in bad systems. There are sometimes resource issues associated with DEP, and can, in fact, if we were to allocate additional resources, can it be retooled in a manner that would bring it into the 21st century to be able to deal with the challenges that we have, not only with respect to Marcellus, but with respect to permitting and environmental protection more generally across the Commonwealth. My feeling is that there is always room for improvement. And as someone who had a steward, a state agency of 350 people, I can see where improvements could be obtained, and I could be pretty critical in an appropriation hearing or in a hearing on a various policy issue to ask the right questions about whether or not we're getting the best bang for the buck. So I always think there's room for improvement in our state systems and our state agencies. I think that the opportunity with Marcellus, the severance tax does create an opportunity for additional resources, but it is the legislature's obligation, to Frank's point, to keep a close eye on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and making sure that we're on the cutting edge to protect the public interest.
Thank you. Frank, anything to add?
Nope, that was